I'm a born a Yorkshireman, and I don't think we haven't taken any fault in Lancashire. I think we've probably had better services with Lancashire than we have with Yorkshire, because the West Riding's an awful long way from Wakefield, and everything came from Wakefield originally, and so it is better in a way, but I still think I'm a Yorkshireman really, so that's how I just feel, so that's how it is.
Well, yes, it was
marrying a Lancashire lass didn't help, did it really? So.
So how do you feel, Elizabeth? Do you feel a Yorkshire lass, or do you came from near Preston?
I feel I was married to a Yorkshireman, so I became a Yorkshire person.
Yeah.
I followed his county.
I think you know a lot more people up in this part of the world than you do in Lancashire now, don't you?
I do
really?
now, yeah.
I mean, did the change affect your way of life in any way?
Oh yes, it changed my way of life, because the first 3 months I was up here I thought I'd go bonkers. Because I was near a mill. I lived near a weaving mill, and a mill that checked cloth to make sure it was A1 for going out for distribution. So there was always people around, and wagons and so forth. And when I came up here to Beckside, and there was nothing, nobody walking past the farmhouse or anything like that, because we were right on the roadside. First 3 months was nearly impossible, but once I got used to it, it was different, and I soon got that I didn't wish to go back to Preston as a town, because there were too many people after being in Clitheroe. The other thing that comes back to me about that is I'd been up here probably 4 or 5 years I'd been up here, and I was walking down the main street of Clitheroe, that's by Boots Chemist's shop, and I looked across the road and I thought, oh, I know that man's face, and I looked again and I thought, that's Pop Thornburgh, and he must have seen me, and before I could turn around he crossed the road and he looked at me and said, unless I'm sadly mistaken, your name's Elizabeth Falshaw. I said, well, it used to be. And he said, what are you doing here? I said, well, I got married and came to live just the other side of Clitheroe, and I've been up here about 5 years. Interesting. And we had a conversation about the area and what he was doing. And Pop Thornburgh was one of my teachers at school.
Oh, really?
And from leaving school to seeing him would be the best part of 7 or 8 years. And yet he still recognised me from those days, and I recognised him. The other thing about around here is everybody in this part of the world seems to go to a primary school, secondary school, or a grammar school. Now, when I went to a church school, and that church school took pupils from the 5 to 15. So I went to one school, and in the whole time I was at school I only had 5 teachers, whereas Bennettt had umpteen teachers at
so
that was the difference.
The consistency of their environment
was different, and you could, going into town, as I said, we were only 3 miles as the crow flies, so there was always a lot of people about, and I could look out of the living room window and I could see the village and the church where we got married and the houses and things like that.
We were married in May, and then in that winter after, it was a very, very cold, snowy winter, and we got a really big snow up and we were blocked in at the farm, and she rang her mother up one day, I'm lonely and I'm fed up. I'd come home if I could get out, so she was stuck, so you had to put up with it, didn't you?
Gosh, tell us about that, because I think that snowy winter was quite
that
an
wasn't
experience.
The snow, the worst snow.
That was a different one.
In 1947, when I was at school, I'd be about
7 or 8.
8.
Yeah.
I never went to school for about 12 weeks. No, 9 weeks
That's
maybe.
the one I've heard about, I think.
And all the roads, and there were no machines for digging the roads out or anything. They were all dug out by hand. And the poor men would dig the road out during the day. The following night it would blow it all back in again. So the thing just, nobody went to school, so, and we didn't even learn anything. But it didn't really bother me because I was happy on the farm, so I was also a bit naughty. There were days when it was haymaking or something special, I wouldn't go to school. And then what's his name? The man that was there,
Precious.
attendance officer would come to try and sort us out. And where was I? And I would hide and out of the way so that I didn't go. He never really saw me, actually. I think my mother and dad would have to try and persuade him differently. But anyway, that was me at school.
Yeah. It must have been another year then when you had difficulty with the milk. Was it the milk?
Oh yeah, that was.
When was that?
63.
That was later.
Yeah.
The milk just didn't go, and it was. He got they got it on the lorry in Rimington. It was outside the Black Bull. And it stayed there for a week. It just went rotten in the churns. So
really?
yeah.
So you couldn't get any of the deliveries across.
No, the only thing that went. The trouble was, we couldn't get the empty churns. There were no empty churns. So the driver would bring the churns to the nearest he could get on the main road was to Sturkhouse Road End, and we went. Me and my cousin. Went across the fields on a little tractor and a trailer, over the hedges in some places, and we got
right over the top of it.
Yes, there's certain walls I can still remember now where we went over the walls on the tractor, and
that's amazing.
And the poor man was still sat there in his lorry outside the Sturkhouse waiting for us coming, and so we got the churns onto the trailers, and that's how we got some of the milk away.
And then when they got them back here,
a lot got wasted.
Yeah, it did. But when they got them back here, they would dish them out between Tony Robinson, High Gayersgill, Mr. Lambert, the Leaches up Howgill, and Moon and Metcalfe. They were in the bottom. And
that's where it's all changed now, because when that was going on, in Rimington there was about 28 farms supplying milk to the dairy, and now there's only 3. So that's where. But the 3 producing more milk than all the 28 did originally. So that's how it's. But the 28 all brought families up.
Yeah.
You know, they all had quite big families.
And how do you feel about that considerable change? I mean, you've watched that happen, haven't you?
I have, and I don't think it's right really, but that's modern farming now, and I don't really agree with it, but
so what do you think we've lost from that, so many communities?
Well, it's gone too commercialised, hasn't it? You know, it's sort of, there's nobody, everything was done by hand, wasn't it? They had to be strong and probably not much brain, but now it's all done by machines, and it's just not. It's lost
community spirit.
All the families that I can remember that have gone through, they're not there anymore. They just sort of, like you say, the sons don't marry farmers' daughters, so they marry towny girls, and like I did, and so I don't know.
There must have been great advantages to living in those communities and sharing sort of social activities in common.
We can just see what's happening in the villages now. We've lost the pub, haven't we now, which is not helping whatsoever. And we used to have the community things, dances in the villages. Nearly all the village weekends would have a dance on Friday night, a wish drive in the start for the older people, and then they would have a dance after. And the dances would sometimes go on till 2 o'clock in the morning. Well, that never happens now, does it? So
it certainly doesn't, no. Of course, that's where you spent a lot of time with the Wallachs, wasn't it, dance?
Oh, yes.
That was one of the passions, really, the people in the area.
Yeah.
Going back to the social side of it, in the Young Farmers section, every Young Farmers Club would have a dance at least once a month.
Yeah.
And you would go from, there'd be one at Gisborne, one at Coniston, there'd be one at Rathmill, one at Sledman, you know, and you'd go round about and you'd even go further afield.
That was something you mentioned about Yorkshire and Lancashire. Then we always sort of went to the young farmers in Yorkshire, which she's just mentioned. They were nearly all Yorkshire.
You felt a sort of affinity.
But get to Clitheroe, or they'd be all in Lancashire young farmers.
Yes.
So they were like, it was split.
Split, yeah.
Because of the two federations, Lancashire Federation and Yorkshire Federation. And now we're in Yorkshire, see, so we nearly always went to Yorkshire clubs. And that's how it, you probably I were lucky to meet a Lancashire lass, because a lot of them would meet Yorkshire lasses, you know. Because somebody once said to me, the best thing that ever happened up the Dale was when they got bicycles, and even better still when they got motorcycles, because they didn't go out with the girls they got into the next Dale to get
the transport helped
find some better
gave them better choice, you think?
He said crossbreeding, better crossbreeding.
Better crossbreeding.
Better crossbreeding and no inbreeding.
Yeah, but
that was what
you must admit, that happened in the old days. There was a bit of inbreeding.
Yeah.
And that was not good.
Yes.
There was a
change in transport that made a huge difference. In your view.
There was a gentleman and his wife who did an awful lot of work for Gisborne Young Farmers Club, and they never had family at all. And they didn't have family for the simple reason that one or two of the children that were born into these families were either mental or retarded or something, because there was that much inbreeding.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, it was a little bit of a bad thing, was that?
Yes, it was a bad thing. And we had who came in court? Oh, yes, a friend of ours, she was a Gisborne Young Farmers member with Bennettt, came here 3 weeks ago, and she had a gentleman friend with her, because they're both widow. She's a widow, he's a widower. And a man called Ian Coates came down the drive on his tractor and machine. He was working for Bennettt. And Bennettt just said, "Oh, that's Coates." And he just turned around and said, "Yes, that's my cousin." And they were all, they were cousins, and their great-grandfathers or great-grandfathers were brothers, and brought up at a farm called Rainsker, up near Ingleborough. You know, and that's how...
Not so much in this area, it wouldn't be, but when it got into the proper Dales, that's where it would be. Yeah.
A lot of inbreeding, yeah. Right, carry on. What else do you want to know?
I see you've got also...
I'd like the story of the tractor, the first... Was this the first tractor after the war?
Oh,
you can tell us about the war, and your experiences before the Grand Tractor came. I think it probably made a bit of difference to your way of life as far as...
It made a lot of difference. I never really worked with the horses. The horses were before my time. When I left school, we had a tractor, the first tractor my dad bought from Rufus Carr, which would be...
1953.
Yeah, and but I never really worked with tractors. But then we bought one or two old tractors, and then for some reason we wanted a better one, and Rufus Carr brought us one which wasn't a success. It broke down. It was a mess. So my dad kind of saved up, and he bought a new one, and it was a new model out, and it cost £630, and I was about 13 when that came, and that was the best. When I set off and drove that back down from the garage, that was one of the best days I can ever remember. Because I have some pictures of myself somewhere. I think I had got to long trousers out of them.
Yes.
But I could drive this, and some of the older men just couldn't drive it. They'd never driven a tractor, so they just didn't know how.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
That's the tractor that pictures Derek Silverwood as...
Yes.
And who else? One other.
There's Altham, Metcalfe, Lawrence Silverwood and Bennettt.
Yeah,
Lovely picture that.
Yeah. They were Rufus's mechanics.
Yeah.
I know at the time when that tractor came at the time, they were putting the electricity supply in these poles all down the fields.
So that will be which year was that?
Yeah, and no web electricity in the thing. They would decide to buy a machine to dig the holes and put the poles in. Because up to then they'd all been done by hand. Anyway, they got this machine brand new with all the no-web top brass stood round watching this machine dig the hole, and they got it absolutely stuck. They just couldn't move it, and the driver that was on it was shaping absolutely useless because he didn't know he'd never driven one before. And so somebody said, "What are we going to do?" And my dad stood there. "Well, let me have a go." And I jumped on this blooming thing and drove it out of this field, and the old me, 13, drove that out of there, and all the no-web men just stood there in amazement, like they didn't know what to do.
And you felt $1 million.
Yeah.
And talking about electric, and you see them putting poles in and stuff like that. The poles that come down this field here are the original ones that were put in 1951.
Yeah.
Are they?
They must be brilliant wood, that must
It must
be.
be brilliant.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because they come and inspect them about every couple of years. And last time they came, I said, "Are they getting ready for brew plating?" He said, "Certainly not."
No.
And they've been here since.
And they were all put up by hand, you know, those. Incredible to watch them do that. About
So
6
how
months.
would they do?
They dug a hole, big hole,
Hoisting, some sort
with
of
a spade,
Yeah.
and then they put a plate down the side, laid the pole next to it, and then about 5 or 6 men would stand it up on a stock, and they'd long poles with spikes on, and then tied ropes to each side, and they manually put those poles up by hand.
Good heavens. Yeah, two men pulling and men each side that side holding it.
Steadying it. Like a maypole?
Yeah, very similar.
Yeah. And there was the people behind with very long sticks. The tin sheet would slide. It would have oil on it,
Yeah.
so it would slide down the tin sheet as they pulled it up,
Yeah.
and it tilted up.
And if ever you want to go,
And if they'd have a rope on the bike, so that when we got it upright, the men could keep it upright while somebody else filled it in.
everything by shovels and spades. And if ever you go and stand and look, you just want to go to the end of those poles and just glance your eye down. They're absolutely straight as a die.
Amazing.
You know, there's no bend in them anywhere.
And now they come along with some
Everything
sort
with
of
a machine.
grab with a machine.
Yeah.
You think how much labour
Yeah.
was involved.
There was
How
always.
many jobs kind of a shed
Yeah.
with the mechanism going. You know,
There were 6 or 8 to 10
Sorry.
men in every gang, you know.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.